Today, I want to talk about something uncomfortable today, something honest, something true. This is why you don't succeed. It's not because you aren't smart enough. It's not because you lack resources or opportunities. It's not even because you failed. You don't succeed because of how you respond to failure. You want things fast. You want growth now. You want clarity before commitment. But life doesn't work like that. Somewhere along the line, we were told that passion is enough. That believing in yourself is the key, that you just have to want it. But here's the reality: most people don't succeed because they quit when it gets hard. They want certainty before taking risks. They wait for motivation instead of building discipline. They fear judgment more than regret. And worst of all, they compare their journey to someone else's highlight reel. Success requires more than inspiration. It requires sweat. It demands patience. You don't succeed because you're measuring progress by likes, by titles, by income, when it's your impact, your consistency, your inner peace that matter. The truth: you don't need more confidence. You need more courage. You don't need more speed. You need direction. Success isn't a finish line. It's a habit. It's showing up even when no one's watching. It's sticking with it when it's boring, slow, and uncertain. So the next time you think, "Why haven't I succeeded?" ask yourself instead, am I willing to keep going even when it's not easy, popular, or perfect? If the answer is yes, then you're already on your way. And that, my friend, is how success actually begins. We often grow up believing that talent is the deciding factor in success, that the smartest, most gifted, most naturally capable people are the ones who rise to the top. But that belief is misleading. Talent may give someone a head start, but it doesn't guarantee they'll finish the race. In fact, many of the most successful people in history weren't the most talented. They were the most resilient. Failure is a constant companion on the journey to success. It's not something to be avoided, it's something to be expected. And yet, most of us treat failure like it's a sign to stop. We interpret it as a verdict, not feedback. When something doesn't go our way, we internalize it, we make it personal. And that's where the problem begins, not in the failure itself, but in our reaction to it. The people who succeed are the ones who have learned to look at failure differently. They don't see it as shameful. They don't see it as a threat to their identity. Instead, they use it as a signal, an opportunity to learn, to recalibrate, and to grow. They know that the greatest lessons come not from what works, but from what doesn't. They expect resistance and adapt through it rather than avoiding it. What often separates those who rise from those who stall isn't a matter of brilliance. It's emotional endurance. It's the ability to stay in the game long enough to figure it out. Talent might help you win early, but your relationship with failure determines whether you win at all. Those who fear failure tend to stay safe, and staying safe often means staying stagnant. In organizations, in schools, and even in families, we don't do a good job teaching people how to fail well. We glorify perfection, reward quick wins, and punish mistakes, sometimes silently, sometimes explicitly. So it's no surprise that many people grow up thinking failure is the end of the road. But the truth is, failure is simply part of the process. And if we're not failing, we're not pushing ourselves far enough. We also tend to confuse struggle with inadequacy. Just because something is difficult doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, the difficulty might be proof that you're doing something worthwhile. The path to mastery is paved with discomfort. Success is messy, and those who succeed are often the ones willing to endure that mess with humility and persistence. Some of the most impactful people in the world failed over and over again, publicly, painfully, and repeatedly. But they didn't let those failures define them. They didn't shrink from the moment. They kept going even when it hurt. And eventually, the resilience they built through failure became more valuable than the talent they started with. So if you're wondering why you haven't succeeded yet, don't look at how talented you are. Look at how you respond when things go wrong. Do you retreat or do you reflect? Do you hide or do you grow? Because success doesn't ask, how gifted are you? It asks, can you keep going when it's not working yet? We live in a world that celebrates quick wins. Stories of overnight success flood our feeds, and we're conditioned to believe that if something is meant for us, it will come easily. So the moment things feel hard, uncertain, or slow, we assume something's wrong. And that assumption leads many to stop far too soon. Not because they aren't capable, but because they don't stay long enough to find out what they truly are capable of. Quitting doesn't always look dramatic. It's not always slamming a door or walking away. More often, quitting looks quiet. It looks like procrastination. It looks like lowering the goal. It looks like telling yourself, maybe this wasn't for me, when what you really mean is, this is taking longer than I thought. The truth is, many people don't fail at the goal. They simply stop before the goal has a chance to take shape. There's a moment in every difficult journey where doubt starts whispering. Is this really worth it? Do I even belong here? And in that moment, most people look for an exit. They want relief, not resilience. But here's the paradox. Success often comes right after that moment. The breaking point is usually the turning point, but you have to stay long enough to see it. Most people quit in the valley, unaware that the climb is just ahead. Perseverance isn't about blindly grinding. It's about trusting the process even when results haven't shown up yet. And that's uncomfortable. Especially when you're surrounded by people who seem to be moving faster, winning sooner, or getting praise while you're still building in silence. It's tempting to assume they're doing something right and you're doing something wrong, but often they just kept going. That's the only real difference. In teams, in startups, in creative work, the biggest breakthroughs don't happen in the beginning. They happen somewhere in the middle, when things are unclear, when motivation runs low, if you decide, when the original spark starts to dim. The people who succeed aren't the ones who always knew what to do. They're the ones who kept showing up until they figured it out. Success favors those who are still standing when others walk away. We've romanticized beginnings. We celebrate the launch, the announcement, the I'm starting something new. But beginnings are easy. Endurance is rare. Anyone can start. Very few stay long enough to master. And in that staying power lies the real difference between a dream and an accomplishment. It's not about how excited you were on day 1. It's about what you chose to do on day 37, when no one was cheering. Some people give up not because they lack commitment, but because they expected faster results. And that expectation crushes more dreams than failure ever could. When we assume progress will be linear or fast, we grow impatient with the most essential part of growing, the slow, quiet phase. But that phase is where skills are refined, where confidence is built, and where character is shaped. Most people aren't missing potential. They're missing patience. They don't lack drive, then lack endurance. They stop after the first setback, the first rejection, the first month without visible results. And in doing so, if you decide, they give up the one thing that could have made the difference in time. Because in the end, the only way to fail for sure is to stop trying too soon. Human beings are wired to seek comfort. We want things to make sense, to feel safe, to come quickly. It's natural. We crave certainty because it gives us a sense of control. And we crave speed because we've been conditioned to equate fast with successful. If something happens quickly, it must be right. If it takes time, we assume something's wrong. But real success doesn't follow that logic. It rarely feels safe, and it almost never comes fast. The discomfort of uncertainty makes people hesitate. They want to know the outcome before they take the first step. They want proof before commitment. But success doesn't work that way. The most meaningful pursuits come with no guarantees. You don't get to know how it ends. You only get to choose if it's worth beginning. And that's the risk. That's the part most people avoid. They hold back, waiting for a sign that might never come, missing the opportunity right in front of them. Speed, too, is misleading. In a world driven by instant results, fast downloads, 2-day shipping, viral content, we've lost our tolerance for slowness. And yet, every worthwhile endeavor, whether it's building a career, launching a company, growing a relationship, or mastering a skill, takes time. A lot of it. Patience isn't just a virtue in the world of success, it's a requirement. Because most of the process is invisible before it becomes undeniable. We often confuse movement with progress. Just because something is happening quickly doesn't mean it's happening meaningfully. In fact, when you rush the process, you compromise the foundation, you cut corners, you chase shortcuts, and eventually you discover that fast success can be fragile. It wasn't built to last. True growth, the kind that sustains, isn't explosive. It's steady, incremental, and often quiet. Think about anyone who has built something lasting. They didn't know on day 1 what the end would look like. They made decisions with limited data. They trusted instincts, embraced discomfort, decide, and kept going through long periods of uncertainty. And that's what separates them. It's not brilliance or boldness. It's the willingness to keep walking without knowing where every step leads. When we demand certainty, we limit our potential, because certainty only exists in what is already known, already tested, already safe. But growth lives in the unknown. Progress requires experimentation, and experimentation means failure is possible, sometimes even likely. That's not weakness, that's the price of doing anything worthwhile. To grow is to take risks without guarantees, and when it doesn't happen fast, most people assume they've done something wrong. But the timeline of success isn't universal. Some things take years to unfold, and what looks like a late bloomer on the outside is often someone who was patiently building below the surface for a long time. The world just wasn't watching yet, but they didn't stop, because they weren't in it for fast applause. They were in it for real impact. The people who reach real success, the kind that's deep and sustaining, are almost always the ones who sat in uncertainty longer than they wanted to, and waited longer than they thought they should have to. But they waited with intention. They didn't just wait passively. They kept showing up, kept adjusting, kept risking. Because they understood success doesn't reward urgency. It rewards endurance in the unknown. Motivation feels good. It's that spark, that surge of energy you get when a new idea hits you or when you're inspired by someone else's story. It can light a fire under you. But the thing about motivation is, it's emotional. And like all emotions, it comes and goes. One day it's there and the next it disappears. Relying on motivation to carry you to success is like depending on the weather to decide whether or not you'll show up. Discipline, on the other hand, is consistent. It's not flashy, it's not loud, and it doesn't always feel good, but it's dependable. Discipline is the ability to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. That's what separates high achievers from dreamers. Not their level of motivation, but their capacity to keep showing up on the days when motivation is nowhere to be found. Most people wait until they feel ready to take action. They wait for the mood to be right, for energy to be high, for the path to be clear. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline acts. Discipline says, even if I don't feel it today, I'll still do it today. That one mindset shift, doing what matters regardless of how you feel, can change everything about your results, your progress, and your mindset. The problem is motivation sells. It's easy to package. It's inspiring to listen to. But if motivation were the key to success, everyone who watched a motivational video would have their life figured out. They don't. Because motivation gives you the start, but discipline gives you the sustain. The real battle isn't about getting excited. It's about staying committed long after the excitement fades. Discipline is what carries you through the boring parts of growth. It's what keeps the artist creating after the initial inspiration is gone. It's what keeps the entrepreneur building through long stretches of uncertainty. It's what gets the athlete back into the gym when no one's cheering. Success isn't about always being pumped up. It's about doing the work whether you're pumped up or not. What makes discipline powerful is that it creates structure where there is chaos. It builds systems around your goals so you're not relying on willpower alone. It turns action into habit, and when something becomes a habit, it starts to run on its own. That's when momentum builds. That's when things start to shift, when effort becomes rhythm. Discipline also builds trust, not just from others, but within yourself. Every time you follow through on something hard, you prove to yourself that you're someone who honors their commitments. That kind of internal credibility is priceless. It's what keeps you grounded when things get tough. Because when you trust yourself to follow through, uncertainty becomes less threatening. You stop questioning if you can, because you've already shown yourself that you do. So while motivation may be a great spark, it's discipline that builds the fire. It's discipline that keeps the engine running when the novelty wears off, when it's cold outside, when the doubts creep in, when progress is slow. It's not glamorous, but it's the most reliable tool you have on the road to success. One of the most powerful forces that shapes our decisions is rarely spoken out loud. It's not fear of failure. It's not fear of hard work. It's the fear of judgment, what other people might think, what they might say, how they might label us. And this fear doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up in the hesitation before we speak, the silence when we should contribute, the decision to play it safe when our heart wants to leap. We all want to be liked. We want to belong. It's a basic human need. But that same need can quietly control our lives if we're not careful. We start editing ourselves to fit in. We start choosing what's acceptable over what's authentic. We start living a version of our lives that's tailored not to what we value, but to what others expect. And with every decision made to please others, we move a little farther away from who we really are. It's not that we don't have dreams. It's not that we don't have goals. The issue is many of us are more afraid of being judged for trying and failing than we are of never trying at all. That's the tragedy. We don't act because we imagine the commentary, what our family might say, what our friends might think, what strangers on the internet might post. And so we settle, we delay, we choose regret over ridicule. Judgment is tricky because most of it isn't even real. We project it. We assume others are thinking about us far more than they actually are. The reality is, most people are too busy with their own insecurities to focus on ours. But still, we let the imaginary courtroom in our mind control our choices. We become prisoners of perceptions that may not even exist. What makes this fear so damaging is that it robs us of opportunities before they begin. It stops us before we even start. And in that hesitation, dreams die quietly, not because they were impossible, but because the noise of imagined judgment drowned out the voice of inner conviction. And the longer we listen to that noise, the more we forget what our own voice even sounds like. And yet, when you talk to people later in life, you rarely hear them say, "I regret trying." More often, they say, "I regret not trying." That's the real cost. Not embarrassment, not criticism, but the heavy, lasting weight of wondering what could have been. Regret doesn't shout, but it lingers. It stays with us far longer than judgment ever could. Judgment is temporary. Regret is permanent. The irony is the people whose opinions we fear most often aren't the ones living our lives. They don't wake up with our responsibilities. They don't carry our purpose. They don't feel our potential. And yet, we let their possible disapproval guide our decisions. We hand over the steering wheel to people who aren't even in the car with us. What we don't realize is that freedom doesn't come from approval. It comes from courage. The courage to risk being misunderstood. The courage to walk alone, if necessary. The courage to act in alignment with who we are, even if it's inconvenient, unpopular, or judged. Because in the end, success isn't about being liked. It's about being true. So, as you walk away from this moment, remember this: success isn't a mysterious gift reserved for the chosen few. It's a practice, one built on how you face failure, how long you stay in the fight, how you embrace uncertainty, how you show up when motivation fades, and how you choose courage over fear every single day. The path won't be easy. It won't be fast. But it will be worth it. Because the people who succeed aren't the ones who never stumble. They're the ones who refuse to quit. They are the ones who, despite every doubt and every fear, keep moving forward. And the question you must ask yourself now is simple. When it gets hard, will you quit or will you keep going? If you choose to keep going, you've already taken the first step towards success.